In this video, we're going to talk about PEMF, coherence, and enlightenment. Hello, this is Brian Myers, author of PEMF, The Fifth Element of Health. I'm really excited about this video. We're going to talk about one of my favorite topics, which is coherence. So coherence is basically order, harmony, synchronicity, connectedness, wholeness. Now, it's kind of a sticking together, a consistency or a constancy. And in speech, now when we talk, we use the word coherence, like if someone talks coherently, they're talking intelligibly, they're making sense, we understand them. What they say all fits together in an intelligible way. Now, incoherent speech is kind of meaningless, nonsense, it doesn't make any sense. So we're kind of familiar with the word coherence in speech and just kind of in everyday language. So what I have here is sort of a staticky signal. So an incoherent signal is a signal that has noise, static, it's disconnected, and of course we all know this from radio. You know, if you're leaving town and you're listening to the radio, the music becomes staticky, you kind of lose reception. Well, that's incoherence of the signal. Coherence is a clear, ordered, and connected signal. So as you can see on the screen here, it's a very clear, high-fidelity signal. Like on your TV, that would be like a crisp, beautiful image on your TV, where versus, say, a staticky image where the TV's got distortion and static. So now I want to show over here that you know coherence better than you probably realize, and that's with relation to your emotional states. Okay, so I love how Heartmath has this graph here, and they've done extensive research on heart rate variability, meaning they can see the signal of your heart rate in the frequency spectrum, which is heart rate variability, and they have shown how it relates to different states of consciousness. And here's the bottom line. Remember that staticky signal I talked about over here? It turns out that negative emotions are very staticky. They have this choppy waveform, and you kind of think of it, that makes sense, right? When you're angry, you're frustrated, you're anxious, you're upset, your brain's kind of all over the place, and it just makes sense that it's kind of an incoherent state, right? Well, you know the feeling of that incoherence. It's a very uncomfortable, unpleasant feeling. So Heartmath has broken it down into kind of this grid here. So it's basically low and high and positive and negative. So on the positive side, we have love, appreciation, joy, happiness, and peace. So on the higher end of positive is like your excitement, jubilation, happiness. In the middle is kind of just love, appreciation, just a really super high positive emotion. And then down here on the low side, we have contentment, relaxation, peace. Now on the negative side, we have at the higher end anxiety and anger. In the middle, there's frustration, resentment. And down here, we have apathy and sadness. So we have this experience when we're in a positive emotional state, we feel more harmonious, right? We feel more balanced. We feel good. Everything kind of flows smooth and easy. These are all characteristics of coherence. Now, physiologically, what's happening is that there's two or more of our rhythmic systems that become in sync. So, for example, your breathing rate, and Heartmath has shown this, can become in sync with, say, your heart rate variability and your blood pressure. In fact, they found that when you're in a really high coherent state, it's around 0.1 hertz, which actually, with the global coherence, actually matches one of the frequencies of the Earth. So interestingly, when we really get connected into a high state of coherence physiologically, we're matching and we're one with the Earth at a deeper level. This is why I tell people when you reconnect to nature, there's just so much more than just physical health. I mean, it translates into emotional health, mental health, and spiritual health as well. Because again, coherence is not just one of these things, it's when it all comes together. When the physical, emotional, spiritual, mental, everything kind of comes together, that we can experience the highest level of coherence. And coherence equals health. In fact, the highest level of health. Maywan Ho says coherence is what makes life possible, especially quantum coherence. And I just want to talk a little bit about quantum coherence because it takes coherence to even another level. Sir Roger Penrose was once asked, what is quantum coherence? And he replied, quantum coherence is when a large number of particles can collectively cooperate into a single state, a quantum state. It's called a pure state in quantum mechanics. So when you have a pure state, let's say if we were a pure state, This is why I put enlightenment up here as part of the topic of discussion. If we could theoretically be in a quantum pure state, we would be totally one within ourselves and the entire universe. And the reason we have to be one with the universe is that a pure state, there's only oneness. So we can't just be one within ourselves. We literally have to be one with the planet, the solar system, the galaxy, and the cosmos. And I do think this is a possibility. I mean, when you read accounts of cosmic consciousness by like Yogananda and other spiritual teachers, this seems to me like a quantumly coherent pure state where everything becomes one. There is no separation. Everything is working in perfect harmony. So to me, that's kind of the end goal. That's even beyond just health, okay? This is like the ultimate goal of our life, I feel. So now I want to shift gears and talk about energy medicine and PEMF and how coherence relates to our health. Okay, so the human body is a coherent field, and just as I teach with the elements of health in my book, PEMF the Fifth Element, we can kind of look at the different elements of coherence as well. So let's say we have our body here, and I'm going to use a stick figure because I'm not an artist. So we have the element earth, water, fire, air, and it's ether, or we'll just put up here energy. And then we could go up to mind and spirit, but we'll just kind of focus on the body here. So quantum coherent fields in our body, the earth is going to be crystals. Crystals on a physical level are coherent. They're very well-ordered structures, and in our body, now we don't have quartz crystal, but we do have bone, and our connective tissue matrix, as James Oshman and others have shown, is very crystalline and very coherent and ordered. Water, Gerald Pollack at the University of Washington has found a fourth phase of water called easy water that actually can be charged from different types of light therapy, infrared therapy, and even PMF. And this fourth phase of water is liquid crystalline. So now we have a liquid crystal phase. And again, quantum coherence can happen in very ordered arrays. That's one of the important characteristics of coherence. Now fire is light, okay, and this is going to be like your biophotons. And Herbert Froelich has found very interesting that the body can almost act like a multi-mode laser in its ability to use biophotons with laser-like coherence for split-second communications that are much needed within this complex organism of ours. So with air, that's going to be sound. And a quantum of sound is called a phonon. So we have these pressure waves and sound waves throughout our system. And Heartmath has shown that the heart, for example, the pressure waves that are created from the heart are very coherent and can convey information to the rest of the body. So phonons are coherent sound waves. And then as far as energy goes, the main thing is the biomagnetic field, which I've talked about in other videos, can be measured on a squid magnetometer. And that's a very coherent magnetic field. So when it comes to energy medicine devices, I've talked about the law of reciprocity. And I'm going to put a link at the end of this video. If you haven't watched that video yet, please do. It's one of the most important principles in energy medicine. And it basically states that whatever frequencies something emits are the frequencies that it absorbs. Now within spectroscopy, I didn't talk about this before, there's something called Kirchhoff's reciprocity principle, same principle. And it says that energy is absorbed by the same process that it's emitted. E equals hv, so energy is frequency at the quantum level. Notice there's no intensity in this equation. At the quantum level, intensity is kind of out the window. It's all about frequency, resonance, and coherence. And this is one of the reasons why more is not better and why you don't need a high-intensity PMF, and we'll get to that in a minute. So when it comes to energy medicine, if our body has these coherent fields at the physical, at the level of liquid, and at level of light and magnetism and sound, then doesn't it make sense that we should apply energy medicine modalities that are coherent to induce coherence? Again, if coherence is health, we want to give the body coherent energy. Again, nobody's talking about this, and this is so important. And this, again, is why you don't want to use high-intensity lasers, high-intensity whole-body vibration, high-intensity PMF. It's all about frequency resonance, the pure tones, the pure fields, the pure signals that have the biological effects that can create coherence in the body. And I feel PMF therapy is one of the best forms of energy medicine to create biological coherence because of the way that it penetrates all the way through with no interference. So now in energy medicine, there are not many coherent modalities. With Earth, using crystals, some energy healers use crystals, and the crystal can amplify the energy, their hands-on biomagnetic energy. Water, the body is going to create easy water from light and infrared and other means. But it's important to drink really high quality pure water. Light, Now, as far as light goes, the only form of really coherent light is lasers. And again, you have to use low-level laser therapy. They call it low-level laser therapy for a reason, LLLT, because high intensity doesn't work as well. In fact, it can cause harm, as Michael Hamlin at Harvard showed. Now, with PEMF, you need the signal, well, it's the signal needs to be coherent. And number two, you got to have the right kind of coils and the right configuration. So let's just start with the signal. Now, I've talked about this a lot in other videos, but essentially you want a signal that's a rapid rise and fall, like say a square wave or a sawtooth, and that's going to give you phi dt, not dB/dt as some incorrectly say. It's the change of flux over time, and that creates the ion transport. That creates those circulating eddy currents that mimic exercise in the way that charges and fluids move around cells, which is why PEMF is cellular exercise. And remember, I said in a previous video, this is on an oscilloscope, you see this. That's the time or space domain. Now, the frequency domain is on a spectrum analyzer, so in the frequency domain, you want a broad spectrum of frequencies in the biologically active range. But here's the thing, and I have not talked about this yet, and it's a little subtle, and it's not necessarily easy to grasp, but I have a good analogy. In electrodynamics, if you use a low frequency, low intensity current, you create a pure pulsing magnetic field. The reason you need low frequency and low intensity is that there's a radiation formula in electrodynamics that's a fourth power to frequency and a second power to intensity. So when you raise both the intensity and the frequency of the current, you start to get radiation fields. It starts to radiate away. And the radiation fields go in all directions. They're incoherent. Okay, this is not what we want. But we want what's called a velocity field, where nothing radiates away. It's just a pure magnetic field. The analogy that I like is a soap bubble analogy. So imagine blowing on one of those big soap bubbles, but you don't want to blow on it too hard. You want it to stay attached to the ring. You know, you got a kind of a nice hemisphere. Can you visualize that? So usually we try to blow on them really hard so the bubbles fly away. So the bubbles flying away is the radiation. So we don't want that. We want the bubble to stay attached to the coil. And then what you end up with is a pure magnetic field, just like a bar magnet. However, unlike a bar magnet, which would just be a static bubble, the bubble is going to be vibrating or rippling. And it's that vibration that creates the dynamic effects from a rapid rise and fall signal. But this is subtlety here. We don't want to use a high intensity like those ringer devices. Those high intensity devices create incoherence. And I didn't talk about this, but decoherence or incoherent energy is entropic. It creates entropy. Entropy is what aging is. We want syntropy. We want negative entropy, which is going the opposite direction. And that comes from coherence. So when it comes to PEMF, we want to use a low frequency, low intensity signal. And I didn't mention this yet, but with the coils need to be perfectly circular, tightly wound, pure copper, and you want a full body mat device because you want your whole body to be in a coherent field of energy. And hardly any PEMF company is doing this. I mean, there's companies like QRS and Metathera that have a great signal, but then they drop the ball on the coils. I'll show you an image here of the QRS full body mat coils. It's just like having a great stereo with bad speakers. It's just, I don't know why they do that. In fact, Beamer used to do that, but now with their new system, they improved it and they did it right. So Beamer and IMRS are doing it right. They have both a great signal, broad spectrum of frequencies, rapid rise and fall, biologically active spectrum, and they use tightly wound circular coils. Now, all the devices out there, they're either using too high of an intensity that's incoherent, entropic, it's going to create damage, it's going to interfere with your body's delicate coherence. So here's one last thing to consider about coherence, where everything's kind of in alignment, and this will come together. This is why you need the perfectly circular current loops. So with lasers, the light is all going in the same direction, and it's all the same frequency. It's all in step. It's all in phase. Everything's going in the same direction, okay? And guess what? With low frequency, low intensity PEMF, here's the coil here, the magnetic field lines are coming up to the center of the loop. They're all in the same direction. They're all coherent. They're all vibrating in unison. This is why you need low intensity and low frequency, because otherwise it radiates away in all directions. So thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please do subscribe to my channel here and leave some comments, or if you have any questions, just leave them in the comments below and I'll be sure to respond. Thanks again and have a great rest of your day.